Hello and welcome. You are listening to Gay with God, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Are we still searching? The stories you hear in this podcast will melt your heart and can strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with God. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. And as always, I thank you for coming back every week and sharing this podcast. You're giving us validity and visibility in a way that reaches people's hearts. And I keep getting feedback from people that hearing the stories of the guests that come on this show has been healing for many people. And it has also brought a little healing to the people who have been on the show, and they feel so much different after they've been able to just tell their truth and tell their story and know that they're helping others who may need to hear it along the way. So keep sharing and downloading, and let's keep this podcast going because I love it personally, and I love the guests that come on the show, and I'm so excited to hear their stories. So today, of course, I have another amazing guest to share with you. Dale Lykins is the founder of the Open Table, a non-institutional, open and affirming religious community. After a 30-year career leading traditional churches, he realized that his own values and beliefs no longer aligned with those of his church organization. He stepped out of what was known and comfortable to embrace an authentic life, helping people to welcome the change needed to live truthful lives that are aligned with their core values is the purpose of his blog, the Unlearning Blog. Dale grew up in an evangelical, conservative Christian environment where people who were different were shunned and attacked. Fearing that he too would find himself on the outside, he became afraid to use his voice and share his views. At the age of 55, Dale came out as gay. He would no longer deny the reality that had been sloshing around inside of him all of his life. After 35 years of marriage to a straight woman with whom he raised 2 daughters and shares 2 grandsons, Dale and his wife decided to stay married. They have been living successfully, although not always easily, in a mixed orientation marriage. Dale mentors and coaches other men who are also living in mixed orientation relationships, all of whom are from evangelical Christian church backgrounds. Dale's effort in this work and in all of the facets of his life aims to help others discover what in their lives is holding them back, whether it be relationships, societal norms, institutions, careers, in favor of living a truer, more meaningful life. His journey provides insight to help others navigating the path of merging their inner belief with their outward life. Dale lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, with his wife. So Dale, welcome to the Gay with God podcast. It's part of my charm.
Yes.
So I love having you here, Dale, because we hear a lot of times of people coming out later in life and knowing they were gay, trying to pass, trying to get it, trying to clear whatever it is that we're supposed to clear, get married, that ought to fix it, stay in the church, that ought to fix it. And then it doesn't. And most people that I hear leave that marriage, sometimes painfully, sometimes, together as a couple, they make that decision. So I'm interested as we get through your story and we get to that point where you decided with your beloved to stay together, that, that to me is just a very interesting and new kind of twist to all of the things we go through as we're coming out. So, So again, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, man.
You're welcome. And let's just start at the beginning. I mean, you came out later in life, but when did you know and how has that affected you? So tell us your coming out faith journey story.
When you were reading that little bio, it's not a little bio. It's like, well, that
it's awesome though.
Where am I going to? I thought where to start. So thank you. So when did I know? It's not an easy answer to that, and it's not a straightforward answer, so I'm going to take you through that journey a little bit.
Awesome.
So I knew I was different as early as I can remember. Really a little kid. I knew that I didn't have language for it or anything like that. But looking back, like I know I've always been attracted to guys, like I'm curious about them. And just there was the same sex attraction that was going on in my life pretty early. I often say that when I was watching the Partridge Family as a kid, it was David Cassidy who was always on my mind and got my attention, and that's just one example. So, but as you mentioned too, I grew up in a conservative. Well, I didn't really get into the church until I was in junior high, but my grandparents, who were big influences in my life, and were churchgoers and Christian folks, and my parents sort of as well. And so just the family around me and people around my life early on, and then in junior high, adding the church to that, did not give me language or ideas or even the ability to think I'm gay, and that this is okay. So it just didn't occur to me, that was who I am. And so I just, did what you're expected to do.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say that is just so classic that, people feel that, we wouldn't know if we weren't put around that, if kids didn't see gay people holding hands, if kids weren't exposed to that, then we wouldn't be gay. But I'm one of 3 kids, and my grandfather was a minister, my uncle was a minister, and we didn't have language for it either. There was no representation, there was no, other than condemnation, there was no language around having a same-sex loving relationship. And yet my siblings happen to be straight. So, we're raised in the same culture, and it's not what we see, it's who we are. So you struggled with that too, that there was no language and no images for you to even have a clue.
No language, no images, unless they were jokes.
Oh, right.
Or like you said, a condemnation kind of thing, or even if basically even back then, even on TV, and if there ever was any, it was a joke, or it was over dramatized, and it was just something that the people in the room watching with me would have, that just wouldn't have been something that would have been a positive experience. So all of that just reinforced the path that my life took. And it is classic when you said that, now the people that I talk to and that connect with me, who have come from a conservative evangelical Christian background as well, and I think that's fair enough to say. I don't want to be condemning of folks, but on the other hand, it is reality that they are looking to, these guys, and they're mostly men who reach out to me, have been in that same situation. And so a lot of men as we'll talk in a bit, but about in mixed orientation marriages who come out later in life have had that experience. They've tried, as you said, to pass through. They've tried to do what was expected and what they thought was righteous, and that even God would expect, and then just at some point in life cannot do it anymore. And so that's my story too. So I got married at 20, and had a kid by 22, and two daughters, who are adults now, of course, and awesome. And the way that I did refer to, and I'm going to say attack, but try to work with being gay and the same-sex attraction was, I referred to it as my struggle.
Okay.
It was a struggle. It was a struggle that I could win. And it had a beginning. It had reasons. It was because my dad maybe was not so emotionally connected to me as a kid. I didn't have a lot of guy friends. I even went to counseling, and I had counselors who even would reinforce that. Like if I just made good friends with guys, and could have some sort of bonding and that it would fill the hole. It would settle the struggle, and then that would go away. So that's always the way I thought of it all through my life, even as, I talked about being a little kid, but as I got into junior high and high school and young adult and married, and, so there was this struggle in my life. And my wife from the beginning knew about the struggle.
Wow.
I was open about that, and just,
good for you.
And needed, wanted her support in helping me overcome it. So there we go. I mean,
and thank you for coming. No.
Yeah. Yes. So
tie that up with a little bow. Well,
then I was thinking, well, how do I get from 38 years ago?
I'm just impressed as we're pausing. Let me just say that I'm very impressed that that you were able to be honest and authentic with your wife about your struggle right up from the beginning. And I honor her for not turning away from your love for her or her love for you, that you guys made a decision to go through the struggle together. And back in the day, I mean, it really wasn't as prominent as things are now, where people can look at all sorts of different relationships, and they have a chance to resources and to reach out to people. But you guys did it in the beginning of when it still was taboo and hush hush. Well, it's still taboo, but it was hush hush.
And yes, it was very hush hush. And and it's not like either of us said I was gay.
Right.
I denied it, actually. I've been asked, are you gay? Do you think you're gay? No, I am not gay. And I believed that because I had a struggle. And God, prayer, counseling, bonding, male friends, all of that was going to eventually someday, take care of this thing.
This thing. So that's interesting. So how do you get from all of that struggle and being in church and praying all this time for this struggle to go away?
Right.
Where does that leave your faith when back then? How did you reconcile why you didn't get what you perceived to be the correct answer from God?
Well, I think that's because I put it all on me. And I think that's what my church did to me about everything. I mean, that's another podcast, you probably, but just because all of the religious system I grew up in was about doing the right things and checking off the list of things that you should do or not do. And the not do list was way bigger. And if, you had any issue in your life, it was because you didn't have enough faith, or you didn't try hard enough, or you didn't, so
all the guilt.
Yes, all the guilt. I have written in a memoir that I'm actually submitting to agents recently. And that I put it this way, that I believed that, and was taught, I think, that God both hated me and loved me at the same time. Oh. So that's that thing going on inside of me. So, we made it through all of that just, by not, I don't know, I didn't believe I was gay. I never thought, I didn't have a thought. This is something I think is real important for people to understand, at least my story. And I think it's true for some others. I didn't have a thought that I was gay. So again, it's because I was in this struggle, and it was a battle, and and it would eventually end. So at 55 in 2018, I had gone through, try to put this in a nutshell, I'd gone through that whole year and the one before was real instrumental in my life in lots of ways. And I had taken a renewal leave that year to just kind of focus on this place that I was feeling, I wasn't meeting my professional goals as a pastor, which was pastoring in the United Methodist Church since 1989. I was thinking, what's going on with me that I need to, work on, or what things do I need to spend time. I had been back to counseling, which is kind of an ongoing thing in the background of my life. and there had just been a lot of things come to this point. So I had made some decisions, some, steps forward. And so July of 2018, I was on vacation, taking vacation time. Well, so was my wife, and we were at home and were watching the movie Love, Simon on a DVD about a high school kid who is gay, a boy who's gay, and then struggles with coming out and then gets outed. So that's the story. And I had wanted to see it when it was in the theaters and didn't. So we watched it, and I really connected with Simon, and I didn't expect all of that. And when it was over, Midge, I was in like tears.
Aww.
And here's the way I talk about that, is it felt like, not in some literal sense, but it felt like God like sat down and said right to me, look, give up the struggle. This is who you are, and you need to just accept that and say it and own it. And so Shelley, my wife, she knew I was crying, and I said, we need to talk. And we sat down on the couch, and she said to me, you really are gay, aren't you?
Aww.
And I said, I am. I said, I just can't, live anymore not accepting that. And it has just been, as a matter of fact, we get a little emotional now. It's been the most amazing thing, to be honest. And as I heard someone say on a TV show recently, a Netflix show, but I heard someone say about their coming out that someone asked them what was different now. And I got asked that the very next, after I came out publicly, which was about a year later. I'll talk about that. But and I loved what they said because it resonated with me. So I've borrowed that, but I no longer hated myself. So that's what was different. And it still is. It's been an amazing journey. Yeah. So we pretty quickly, I don't know if that day, I think we talked about a little teeny bit, well, what's that mean for us? And we knew that there's no way we can answer that, in a moment.
Right.
But we did pretty soon, make the commitment. It's like, well, we love our life together. I love you, I told her, and we loved each other. And we have a family with grandkids that we enjoyed together, and it's like, we're going to try to make this work. Let's just see what happens. And so we did that, and found other groups that you were talking about earlier. There are several Straight Spouse Network. There's actually, I don't know all of them. Shelley is more a part of them than I am. So anyway, she became part of those, and we started doing some research and found out that there's a name for this thing called mixed orientation marriage, and that we are not at all alone. And so one and that just fed into this decision to try to make this work, because other people were trying. The percentage is really low about marriages that make that survive this, but we're doing really well.
Good.
And that has taken a lot of work. It's been 3 years now. So we have worked both on we got a counselor together, and then we've done individual counseling. And what we found, Midge, mostly is that the issues, the traumas we both carry to our relationship from our past, some we discovered during this time, that have led us to the ways we react and behave, and and the triggers that happen in us, were going to be issues for us no matter what. And
Right.
me coming out just put a big wall up where they went splat. You've got to deal with it now.
Right.
And so we did, and really did that hard work. And so that has just been a big part. Well, the reason I think that we're still together 3 years and are doing really well. So
this may be too personal, but how does that work? I mean, for you to live in a marriage that is authentically loving, but not authentically who you are necessarily. So how does that work? How do you honor yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a common question. Shelley invites me to be fully me.
Wow.
And she has said that to me. I love you. I don't want you to. And she talks about it better than I do. We're in 2022. We haven't yet figured this out because it's not been that many weeks into it, that we're going to figure out how we can be of help to the mixed orientation marriage community and share our story. And
you both will come back. Yeah. You both will come back to the Gay with God podcast and give us information.
Okay. When we do that.
Yeah. When you do that
would be
I want
great.
you to both to come back because, this is, I think what you guys are doing is a gift to each other. And I think it can be a gift to the community. And it can save a lot of heartache for people who are able to do it. I don't think it's the path for everybody. Clearly.
It is not. And I would not want to.
And
different people have their own comfort levels with how they, or decisions they make about what will work for them and not. And so, I don't, I'm not, excuse me, here, I wouldn't say that you have to do it the way we do it.
Oh, sure.
So I came out to Shelley in 2018, and we didn't tell very many people. We told 2 friends, one of which is a counselor. And they're both gay, they're husbands. And then a good friend of Shelley's, who she said, look, I need to tell somebody, because we didn't, and so I can have some personal support. And so she told person who was part of my congregation at the time. Well, all of 3 of those people were. And rule of thumb is about a year or so before, give it a time before you bring other people into that, because, and what I mean by that is even telling others, like for me to start coming out to people, Shelley and I needed to work, to give us time to adjust to that reality in our life. So we did it. It's about 9 months. And so in May of 2019, I told my mom, and then my 2 daughters, we both told our 2 daughters, who were just great. They said, they were just like, well, duh. Seriously.
Your kids said that?
My one, they said, our friends in high school, I said, your dad's either gay or the gayest straight man that I've ever seen. And so, there's a lot of stereotypes in that, so that's not necessarily good. But it's a fine reaction. I appreciated their, they were not, and we occasionally, whenever we do get a chance to all be in the same place at the same time, once in a while we will sit, we'll have more conversations. Just say, we'll answer questions from them about, you want to ask us how we're doing or anything about our, your mom and I. And so we have those pretty open conversations. So,
that is awesome.
Yeah.
So your mom was okay too?
Eventually.
Okay.
Mom was okay in the moment. Not great, but okay. But I get that. I had time to deal with that for a long time.
Okay.
And so then after May of 2019, we started telling, like my sister and then more people. And by the time I left the United Methodist Church, and then started the Open Table, which was in July of 2019. By December 22nd of that year, I came out to them. Many of them knew me for years, and then made it Facebook official that afternoon, and decided I wanted to be authentic with just everybody, and be able to be myself. And so that's what I did. And I got so much affirmation. I was ready to unfriend some folks, Midge, that day on Facebook, but never had to. And I know that would be, naive of me to think that every one of my 1,000 people who are friends of mine on Facebook were happy or understood all of that, because that's not the case. But they just didn't say it, so that was fine with me. But it was
you may see your numbers dwindle over time. People just fall off. Yeah, that's
the opposite. That's gotten bigger. So yes, go ahead.
So I was just going to ask, so when you left the United Methodist Church, was that on your terms, or was that because they asked you to?
It was on my terms.
Okay.
And it really wasn't about me being gay.
Okay.
So, not directly. And that's, so yes, I pastored there in the UMC for 30 years. 2019, in February, March of that year is when they had their last general conference they've been able to have. Specifically around LGBTQ marriage and ordination, and which had been a conversation, I don't know if I guess I'll call it that, since I'd been in the church, and I wasn't raised United Methodist, but in seminary in 1986 when I became UM. So when that general conference decided to not open those two avenues and to open the church to full inclusion of LGBTQ persons, I decided at that point, and I had made this decision before the general conference, that I was not going to stay because it had gotten to a point where I wanted to live my ministry or whatever, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know what I would do, but whatever it was, I wanted to live again this idea of being authentic to what I believed, and I wanted to marry whoever I wanted to marry. I didn't want and I wanted to be open. I wanted to be openly open about that. And I did not retire. I could have at 30 years. I handed in my credentials. I actually walked away. So I was not, I gave them back my ordination, if you want to call it that. I actually still have the little paper from them, but so I resigned my credentials because I didn't want, as an elder in the UMC, an ordained elder, I retired. I still would have been under their rules that were not in alignment with myself.
Oh, perfect.
And so now this is not the place for it, but there was another big piece of that, and I just will hint at it and mention it. So for 10 years, I had also experienced the hierarchy in a way that was not in relationship with me. I just felt I could not stay in a system that refused to, refused to be in that relationship. It was like there was just more and more experiences that were critical, that were about things that did not, I don't know, were about goals and numbers and money and on me about those things. And, I don't want to get into all of that, but the church I was in at the time was having some conflict, and it was not handled well from those above me. And as a matter of fact, so I those two things together, and they were came together about the same time period, is when I said, I'm not doing this anymore. So,
I think that when we talk about a path of ministry, when whatever we were doing is shifting, I think God gives us clear evidence that it's time to move, and makes it uncomfortable enough that if you're not getting the message, I will move you. And it needs to happen in a way that we can't tolerate what's going on anymore. And that truth is the only thing. I think we are all being called to be in a love relationship with ourselves, with the God of our understanding, with the people around us, and to put our ministry into practice under faith instead of necessarily following what we'd like to do. But, and I find myself in that place now, as I was telling you before we went live, that, what I'm doing now, I never would have thought I could do it with the less income and still feel so fulfilled. Because that was always one of my struggles, is, not being poor and being able to afford what I need to have. But this has been, the closing of the business that preempted all of the stuff that happened after 2019. It was, I think it was part of a path to me to get clear about my own personal ministry, my own relationship with God, how to mend the wounds from the past. And it all had to happen because it got shook way up. And I have a friend that was a psychologist, and she used to write these delightful and really informative, really user-friendly psychologicals for the kids that I worked with as a school counselor. And I said, you are so good at putting all this into words and to make it so user-friendly. And she said, I just throw all the pieces up in the air and see where they fall. And I'm like, well,
see what happens.
And I feel like that's what we are sometimes, is our pieces get thrown up and we see where fall and where they need to be. So it sounds like that's what you went through.
It was. And so, like I said, it started 2017-ish and was just, I was being undone, and and then it just, gave me, I was able to make the decisions I did because I had taken the time and the effort to do that hard work of pulling back, taking the renewal leave, getting into counseling again, and taking that very seriously, and just opening myself up to new possibilities. So that all, I left the UMC in June of 2019, and the Open Table became, it became a thing in July. The second Sunday of July. And so we were meeting in people's homes, gathered about 50 folks the first meeting was in a park, and then meeting in homes and in some coffee shops and other places that first summer. And then in September of 2019 started, meeting weekly for worship. And then 6 months later, a pandemic came, and that altered the whole thing. But it has not slowed us down too much at all. And because I said, to those who were saying, we can do this, because I didn't have that on my mind, that I was going to start a church. I was really getting convinced that the church was part of the problem in both people's lives, doing so much harm, and maybe in the world. And I hadn't really thought that all through yet. But I said, if it's, we knew right away it was going to be an open and affirming congregation where people aren't just welcomed, but celebrated. And then I said, if we're going to do this, it is not going to be focused on an institutional model. So we just don't have much of that. And it has been just the most amazing thing to be part of. And I was thinking just the other day, similar to what you were saying, is that, I am doing something I never thought I would have gotten to do. And it is just the most awesome, fulfilling thing.
Yeah.
And doing some really important work in other people's lives who find us because they have been harmed or are looking for a safe place. Or now we're finding people who are deconstructing their own faith, but that's another podcast. And looking for a place to do that. And that's us too. So anyway, it has just been really great experience. I left a parsonage that was paid for by the church. I'd never, 30 years I'd lived in those. I'd never paid a utility bill for 30 years. And so it was a lot of it's a lot about pension and health insurance. And the church paid for the internet and trash pickup. And, it's like, I've never a cell phone. It's like, I've never paid for it. So, 2.5 years later, that's all working really fine. And it's been, I don't know, amazing is not the right word, but to think about how, God worked in all of that. And I was able to be part of a new thing God wanted to do. So
well, you were open, like you said, you wanted to be open to new possibilities, and we say that, but then when we're given the new path of the possibilities, we're like, no, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. But why do I have to do?
I know, really.
Right.
But so your openness and your willingness to be where you needed to be, and I'm so glad that you did start the open table, because people like me who continued to feel that the unworthiness of my gayness made me not likable to God and made me the abomination, and that my faith that was being, my faith story is something way different, but for me to feel like that it was taken from me, that the church and society didn't give me a choice to have a church and a relationship with God. And so I always felt like it was taken from me and that I wasn't worthy to have it. So when my journey came back to try to find church again and a relationship with God, I was glad that I found a church after many failed attempts that were horrible, but I found a church body that has my best interest at heart and my spiritual growth at heart, including my gayness, and a priest that would show me those ways in such affirming and loving ways. And so if a church hadn't been available and I couldn't have found it, I don't know how I would have moved forward, because I never would have had the validation to say, oh yeah, here's how the scriptures are read, really.
Right. Yes.
Really mean. So, other people had alluded to that, but it takes different developmental stages for me to get to the point to hear it and to be it. So I'm glad that you're doing that for people.
It is, and when we were gathering people who were curious at the beginning, and one, I heard, I wasn't at all of those meetings. There were some other people who were hosting them, and someone said, "Oh, we're going to have a gay church," and they were like, "No." And this man who was talking was gay himself. He's like, "We're going to have a church that's welcoming, not just welcoming. That's actually not a word to say, open and affirming. But it won't just be about that." And so I say that to say, but so that's evolved over the time. Not that it's, we have lots of folks who come to our church across the LGBTQ spectrum of being, and then also, allies and people who just want to be part of a church that's affirming because that's important to them.
Yes.
And so, but I have learned over this journey, hearing people share their stories as they become part of us. I've learned how important that safe space is. And then I've also realized how important, and of course, I didn't start the open table out either myself. So, out to everybody, publicly. So as I began to hear other people's stories and then realize for myself too, it was so important in our gatherings and in our, any ways that we are, things that we do together, that people hear themselves and and that the liturgies, the prayers, things refer to things that are important to them, and that, which they've never heard. As a matter of fact, they've only heard abomination. And so, to be able to stand at the table over, waters, a bowl of water, and say, we are one family, queer and straight and cisgender and transgender. And, it's powerful for people to hear those words and to, and words like them from a religious leader.
Yes.
Their pastor and in their church, and for it just to be okay. Someone said to me recently, it was a guy who does our music, and he was talking to his sister, but he leads the team that does music. And he was talking to his sister, who said, she was going to come for something to sing. And she said, well, I need to warn you, my son might show up in a dress and with black makeup on. And he was like, I must not have told you about the church that I'm attending now, because that would just be so okay. And as a matter of fact, we have people who he would be able to identify with, other young people.
Yeah.
And anyway, that just was such a powerful thing for her to accept that there is a place.
Yes.
She felt the need, to not apologize. I don't, but you can see in that she wanted to say, hey, heads up.
Yeah.
He may not fit.
Yep. Yeah.
And then someone from the open table was able to say, oh, he fits just fine.
Yeah.
Amazing, powerful experience to be a part of a community, that just is just okay.
It's just okay.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Love.
Oh, Dale. I'm so glad you did that. And it's online now. You've transitioned to online, or are you still meeting in person?
Well, we've been through that whole journey. We are in person since July last year. July, yeah. But we record those. So we are virtual through Zoom every Sunday. No, I should not say that. I want to say every Sunday we gather for worship. We do not do that every week.
Okay.
Again, we're a very different non-institutional way of thinking about church. So when we gather for worship, which is the second and third week, you can join us virtually on Zoom, and that Zoom is recorded and it is put on YouTube.
Okay.
So all of that can be found on the church's website, which also is linked on mine. But anyway, that and the Zoom link and everything, it never changes, so all of that is there. So you can watch videos from the whole pandemic, the time that we were doing just videos, and then when we were recording in person. So all of that is available. So we are in person and also virtual too, and trying to do a hybrid.
Wow. So I guess to follow up on what we talked about a little bit ago, coming out to all these people and it going pretty well, were there any times where you really felt like it wasn't going to work in your favor?
Gosh, I want to say no. So that's another thing. My counselor's like, just go with your gut. No. But Midge, I think that it's hard to think about the answer just being so easily no, because that seems like, oh, what, really? So, unless you tell me more about what you mean by in my favor.
Well, I was wondering if we spoke about your mom, that she eventually kind of came on board. Was your dad living when you came out?
Yes, my dad. Okay. Yes. And so I told my dad, I actually told him in an email, and that's not what my preference was, but that's a story I won't worry about telling right now. But it was just due to necessity because of timing. I had not told him. I told my mom, and I had not told my dad. And I had seen him less. And then I was going to come out publicly that Sunday. So I needed to let him know. And I thought I would be able to see him, and I couldn't. Okay. So I told my dad, but his response was, it was like, well, you're still family. We love you. And I thought, well, I'll take that. And then he's never mentioned it again. We just don't talk about it. So It's okay. I mean, I just, and he hasn't treated me any different. He's a great squeezy hugger, and he still is, and so I know he knows that. So
yeah.
And my mom, I mean, we had some moments after that for a while, where she was trying to figure that out, and I'm not sure that she's got that all settled now, but she and I have are in a really good place, probably the best that we have been ever.
Good.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Yes. And so Midge, I think I say no because I've worked really hard on I'm okay even if other people aren't.
Love it.
Now, does that mean that there were moments I thought Shelley and I are not going to make this work? Yes. Yes. So do not get the impression, anybody listening, that we made that decision and it was just, squeezy happy. We had to renegotiate a lot of things and try to figure that out. And as I already mentioned, so I won't go through it again, but, just work on our own selves so that our own fears did not derail our lives. And so I knew I was pretty sure that we were going to make that work, but there were moments it was tough.
Yeah.
So
and I appreciate you saying
my family's been my family's been pretty supportive, and my friends, the church, of course, kind of, you want to say, well, of course, but that was still scary.
Sure.
Come out to them. Some of them have known me for a long time, and they're like, what? At least I thought that's what they would think, but that was not the case.
Everybody knows.
So anyway, I don't think so. I really don't. I'm just leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you letting us know that it wasn't just a fine and dandy, tie it with a bow, and we're all going to move down the little yellow brick road.
My family, my community involves, a spiritual director, a coach, counselor, and lots of other people. And many I pay to help me.
And many I pay. Right. Well, I think that's brilliant. I think I love this story because it's all based in love. Your love for your faith, your love for her, your love for your family, their love for you, God's unending love for you, and to be surrounded by all of that through a very stressful struggle. Yes. And then an eye-opening awakening of who you are. I just, gosh, I love this story so much.
Well, awesome. Hearing you talk about it, I'm like, wow, that is powerful. And there is a lot of love. Yes, there's a lot of love.
So tell me about this little memoir that you just kind of like skated right past that, baby.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay. I have a working title anyway. It's Hush, Child, How I Found My Voice and Broke the Silence. So I started writing this 4 years ago-ish, and it feels like a long time to me, but I guess it's not necessarily. Real quick, it's a story, because I don't want to, I could talk about it all day, but I won't do that. So I ended up in voice therapy. Really, it started this whole journey. And through that therapy, as a therapist, who was awesome, asked me to, relax my throat, to relax, and learn different ways of how I was using my voice all these years in wrong ways, or ways that were not healthy. And I could not relax. Like I realized how much tension I carried in my body. Led me to, long story short, led me to counseling, discovered lots of family trauma and personal trauma. And, it started this whole searching for healing and authenticity, and then coming out. And so I thought, I want to write about this experience. Who would have thought that voice therapy was so it's not about voice therapy, but it is about my experiences of, what I was being asked to do and how I just was having such a hard time, and then discovering the reasons that I carried this trauma in the cells of my body, which I think we often do, and they become normal, and so we don't understand what's happening. So that's kind of a nutshell of the story. I talk a little bit about it on my website, but then when we created that at DaleLykins.com, I wasn't at all close to being done. So I can tell I can do more. I will be updating that soon.
Good. So say the working title again. Hush Child.
Hush Child. And then there's a subtitle of How I Found My Voice and Broke the Silence.
Yeah. That's a great working title.
Well, I realized through all of that I had given away my voice. I had not trusted that I had anything to say, even preaching for 30 years, that I had, I fought to be heard. And the voice therapist helped me with all of that. To realize that at one point she was just talking, and this is in the book, she was talking about just the placement of my microphone. She said, "What kind of mic do you use?" And it was I said, well, I said to her, it's kind of like Britney Spears mic, around the ear, right at my mouth. And she said, Pastor Dale, she called me. She said, Pastor Dale, you don't have to talk any further than right there. And she put her fingers right at her mouth where my microphone was. And she said, you have things to say people want to hear.
Wow.
And all of that, that was just week after week of this awesome person who was helping me see that I had given away my powerful voice. And it had been taken as a child. It had kind of started to be taken away. And then I just learned that it wasn't worthy to be heard. So anyway, that of course, that's all that started to come out with the reason to take a renewal leave and to. So all of that journey is in the book. A lot of what I talked about today.
That's awesome. And as soon as you said that title, Hush Child, I thought my mind went to they hushed you and your authenticity. And then you could find your voice. So you and Shelley will be coming back to do the mixed orientation relationship show. You'll be coming back when you publish the book, and we can do a promo for you and get it started and send it out to the ethers. Yeah, you'll just be a returning guest. So don't avoid my calls.
I will not, and I won't forget you.
So since we're not hushing you anymore, here's a question that I want to ask you before we end today. And if we get into more conversation after that, this question, that's fine too. Okay. But so if someone came to you and I can hear the dog starting to bark, so we'll just see. Okay, good. The wife must have gone squash that. So if someone came to you and you could tell that they were struggling and that their voices had been hushed and you wanted them to be liberated before you sent them to the voice therapist, what would you want to say to them? What would you have wished somebody had said to you early on before all the struggle for that many years? What would have been the thing that could have helped you that you would want to give to someone else?
Wow, the reason I'm pausing is my mind, my spirit, and myself is going many different ways, because I was in so need of a lot. And so there is no way that anyone could get from that spot you just mentioned, Midge, to a healing moment without a lot of digging and work. But I would say initially to them that they are worthy because they are a human being alive on this planet. God, if they are, if God is in their frame of reference, they are loved, I would say, and beyond their imagination. And that whole sense of worthiness, which again, just saying it is a beginning, but to believe it and to internalize that takes some work.
That's the journey. Yeah,
it is the journey, but it needs to start with just believing that there is worth and value to you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think everything else falls into place after hearing that. And it needs to be said often, in the beginning, because we tend to take it back. We may give it to God, and then we take back the shame and we take back the guilt. And it doesn't take much to trigger that back into all of that.
Not at all.
Not
yes.
at all.
And especially us, folks who are LGBTQ, I mean, we internalize from, if our experience has involved the church at all, likely, I don't want to speak for every experience, but likely we have internalized some sense of shame and unworthiness and even homophobia that we've carried around. And I did not realize, I came to a point where I realized that was true for me. It's like, wow, I didn't know how messed up all of that had gotten me.
Yeah. And so that's why we do what we do. That's why you are at the open table. That's why I'm here, Gay with God, because I could finally say the word God without feeling like I was going to throw up or be totally pissed off all the time. Just at that word.
Yes, I understand that.
So, we are in a ministry of enlightenment, really, to enlighten people's paths, to see that they are worthy and that there is a purpose for them and that they're loved. And I'm so glad that you're on this earth to do that. And I'm glad that you opened yourself up to that. Before we end today, is there anything else that you would like to say, or anything that we've left unsaid for now? I know there are things that are unsaid that we'll deal with later.
We will a couple of times. It is not lost on me that I am grateful for the journey I've been on and for where it is right now. So I'm just, I give the divine a lot of, and the universe, and, and God, and however people want to think about the process. But it was not just me.
Yeah. That's because it's never just us, right?
No.
We're in it together. Well, again, I know I've said this, but thank you so much, Dale, for honoring us with your story.
Talking with me today. Awesome.
Yeah. And I want to thank my listeners for coming back each week, supporting and sharing and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to see more about Dale, I'm going to be putting some links together and putting them on the Gay with God podcast. But before I do that, Dale, you want to just shout out to where people can find you?
Yes. So go to Dale Lykins, DALELYKINS.com. On that page will be a link to the open table, a link to coaching and public speaking, as well as a link about my book and my blog, which is called the Unlearning Blog. And I think so that's a one-stop, and also Facebook and Twitter links too. So if you just go to DaleLykins.com, you'll find it all.
It's all there.
It's all there.
And if you forget that, go to the Gay with God show page at empoweredmidge.podbean.com, and we'll have his delightful face and his links there. So that's a two-stop shop. If you are questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you are authentically gay, God has always been within you, even when you didn't know it. You have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Stay tuned to hear how you can join the Gay with God community, and check us out on the Facebook group, Gay with God. See you next week, guys. Have a good week and stay safe. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger.
Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.